It's pretty fair to say that alcohol and coffee are two of the most influential drinks in history. How many great ideas were formed in coffee houses or drinking dens? True, a lot of bad ones were also formed in the latter, but that's another story. Humans have been drinking alcohol since, look, if not quite forever, then a very, very long time. The Babylonians even laid down rules for its consumption, as well as fair commerce in it, in what is widely believed to be the first set of written laws in 1750 BC, but there's even evidence of humans consuming fermented beverages as far back as 10,000 BC. We apparently have some Ethiopian goats to thank for coffee. Their herders noticed the berries that they ate were putting more of a spring in their step than usual, so they tried eating them too, although it wasn't until around the 15th century that coffee as we know it began to be cultivated and drunk routinely. In fact, some suggest that we have coffee to thank for the Enlightenment in Europe. Because of the poor standard of drinking water, Europeans routinely drank weak beer and wine, even at breakfast time. As worldwide trade grew, though, coffee, a stimulant, began to be substituted as a safe alternative to alcohol, which is a depressant, and basically, shit started getting done. So it's not exactly surprising that at some point we started combining the two. Spiking your coffee with some whiskey is great and all, looking at you Ireland, but there was a need for a product which could add the coffee flavour and kick to cocktails in a more versatile way. Enter coffee liqueur. Two of the most well-known brands are also the oldest. Tia Maria's recipe apparently dates to the 17th century and was smuggled out of Jamaica by a beautiful young aristocrat fleeing the colonial war. I'd watch that movie. But it wasn't commercially produced until the 1940s, making Kahlua officially the oldest, as it started in the 1930s. It was actually originally used in pretty classic cocktails, often just being substituted in for creme de cacao for a little bit more richness and depth. Then, of course, came the Black Russian and then the White Russian, and coffee liqueur slowly became relegated to the realm of dessert cocktails such as the mudslide. Not to say that they're not delicious and that there weren't still some good quality products out there, but it wasn't really used in serious bars or cocktails for quite some time. Thankfully, there has been a resurgence of interest in this caffeinated delight, with bartenders understanding that it can bring sweetness but also depth and a bitter edge. Mr. Black is part of a new wave of coffee liqueurs. As I discussed in our espresso martini video, Australians take their coffee and their cocktails seriously, and Mr. Black was really born out of that. So it's a cold brew coffee liqueur. Cold brew devotees will know that that technique produces a smoother and less acidic final drink, and this means that only a little cane sugar needs to be added. They source specialty beans and roast them themselves, and the resulting product really makes sure that the coffee is the star. We'll get into making the cocktails shortly, but first I thought it'd be good to do a tasting of this, and that way you've got some idea of how it differs to the aforementioned Kahlua or Tia Maria. Mr. Black are also producing some new varieties. Yes, like your craft baristas, these guys are passionate about bringing you a wide variety of coffee flavors, but we might leave those for another day and concentrate on the hero of this story, the original Mr. Black. So it is a really intense coffee flavor on the nose, like, you know, smells like quite a dark roast, an actual kind of freshly ground coffee. And definitely, yeah, there's like a good amount of booze in there to back it up as well. It's really yummy. Like, it starts off quite kind of caramel and toffee, but in that way, if you have, yeah, like I guess like that quite dark sort of toffee or fudge that's like really chewy and got like a pretty kind of good weight to it. So there's definitely a lovely sweetness there, but it does just then kind of dry out. It doesn't coat your mouth at all. It's actually quite like zippy. It's almost got, again, that way that properly good coffee has actually quite high acid. It sort of just is a fairly cleansing flavour, and you're just left with a really intense coffee note in your mouth, but without too much sweetness. So yeah, of course, if you can't get your hands on this, then absolutely still use, you know, Tia Maria or Kahlua. But I would generally kind of just start with about 5 mils less of either of them, because that like, it's going to kind of overpower, I think, in ways, as much as this has a really intense coffee flavor, the sweetness does kind of taper out towards the end, and you've got like quite a dry and kind of mouth-watering finish, which is obviously really Moorish, whereas I think that with some coffee liqueurs which have a little bit more sugar in there, then if you sort of have that much of it, then it will start to coat your mouth and just feel a little bit too sickly sweet. Yeah. Delicious. So now you know what it tastes like. Let's have a look at some interesting ways to use it.